Greetings and grace. Greetings and grace. All right, we're talking about needing 10 signs from God. God has called you to do something, and you just need 1,000 signs because you have this just huge unsurety, and it's over and over again. And, that can actually sabotage you sometimes. So, this is about Gideon and what it talks about him asking God and questioning God over and over again. And he talks a lot and he asks a lot. And this is a couple of chapters, a few chapters actually. So hang tight. Let's get into it. Judges chapter 6. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them. Hold on, let me make sure I'm doing it. Yep, Judges 6 through 8. Okay. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Because of the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza, and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep nor cattle nor donkeys. They came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count them or their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian so impoverished. Midian so impoverished so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet who said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says: I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians, and I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the God of the Amorites in whose land you live, but you have not listened to me." Verse 11. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah. Oh, it says Oprah, but with an extra H. So Ophrah, that belonged to Joash and the Abiezrite, Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied. "But if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now that the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of the Midian." The Lord returned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord answered, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." Gideon replied, If now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you." And the Lord said, "I will wait until your return." Gideon went inside, prepared a young goat, and from an ephah? What is an ephah? Ephah of flour. He made bread without yeast, putting the meat in a basket and its broth in a pot. He brought them out and offered them to him under the oak. The angel of the Lord said to him, "Take the meat and the unleavened bread, place them on this rock, and pour out the broth." And Gideon did so. Then the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the unleavened bread with the tip of the staff that was in his hand. Fire flared from the rock, consuming the meat and the bread, and the angel of the Lord disappeared. When Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he exclaimed, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But the Lord said to him, "Peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die." So Gideon built an altar to the Lord, and called it "The Lord is Peace." To this day, it stands in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. Lord, sorry, y'all. I be butchering these names. Lord have mercy. And you know what? The Old Testament is wild. Some people they got killed for butchering names. That's crazy. You know what I'm saying? I'm over here like, wow. Um, so, excuse me, verse 25. That same night, the Lord said to him, "Take the second bull from your father's herd, the one 7 years old. Tear down your father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Then build a proper kind of altar to the Lord your God on the top of this height. using the wood of the Asherah pole that you cut down. Offer the second bull as a burnt offering. So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord told him. But because he was afraid of his family and the townspeople, he did it at night rather than in the daytime. In the morning, excuse me, my allergies. In the morning, when the people of the town got up, there was Baal's altar demolished with the Asherah pole beside it cut down, and the second bull sacrificed on the newly built altar. They asked each other, "Who did this?" When they carefully investigated, they were told Gideon, son of Joash, did it. The people of the town demanded of Joash, "Bring out your son. He must die because he has broken down Baal's altar and cut down the Asherah pole beside it." But Joash replied to the hostile crowd around him, "Are you going to plead to Baal's cause? Are you going to try to save him? Are you trying to save him? Whoever fights for him shall be put to death by morning. If Baal is really a god, he can defend himself when someone breaks down his altar." So because Gideon broke down Baal's altar, they gave him the name Jerubbaal that day, saying, "Let Baal contend with him." Now all the Midianites, Amalekites, and they still alive, y'all. They still alive. All the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples joined forces and crossed over the Jordan and camped in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord came on Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, summoning the Bezerites to follow him. He sent messengers throughout Manasseh, calling them to arms, and also into Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, so that they too went up to meet them. Gideon said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece, and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you said." And that is what happened. Gideon rose early the next day. He squeezed the fleece and wrung out the dew, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, "Do not be angry with me. Let me make just one more request." I swear, I bet you God be like, "Oh my God." Does God be like, "Oh my God"? Like, what does God say when when he gets aggravated with us? Um, then Gideon said, "Do not be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece. But this time, make the fleece dry and let the ground be covered with dew." That night, God did so. Only the fleece was dry, all the ground was covered with dew. And then it goes into chapter 7 and then chapter 8. So it goes into chapter 7, talks about how he defeats the Midianites early in the morning. Jerubbaal. That is Gideon. Wow, the fact that they put that in there, that's interesting. These Old Testament people, yeah, they are on a whole nother level. Literally says in the NIV, early in the morning, Jerubbaal, because that's what they decided to call him because they wanted the Baal god to, my lord, the drama. Okay, quick sidebar. I really like comedy and self-help stuff, and then the stuff that's like fiction that does have some spiritual undertones. I'm talking like Game of Thrones, right? And this is wild. This is like, I sometimes feel like there's some stuff in the Bible, and like my grandmother, she watches divorce court or couples court. Like she watches that stuff, and I'm like, Lord have mercy. I'm like, how do you watch these things over and over again? I feel like some of the people in here, they are like that. And I'm like, Lord have mercy. It's like a soap opera. Um, Lord have mercy. So Gideon defeats the Midianites. Early in the morning, Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all his men camped at the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel will boast against me. My own strength has saved me. Now announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead." So 22,000 men left, while 10,000 remained. But the Lord said to Gideon, "There are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out for you there. If I say, 'This one shall go with you,' he shall go. But if I say, 'This one shall not go with you,' he shall not go." So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told him, "Separate those who lap the water with their tongues as the dog laps from those who kneel down to drink." 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. Then the Lord said to Gideon, "With the 300 men that lap, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home. So Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home, but kept the 300, who took over the provisions and trumpets of the others. Now the camp of Midian lay below him in the valley. During that night, the Lord said to Gideon, "Get up, go down against the camp, because I am going to give it into your hands. If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah, and listen to what they are saying. Afterward, you will be encouraged to attack the camp." So he and Purah, his servant, went down to the outposts of the camp. The Midianites and the Amalekites and all the other eastern peoples had settled in the valley, thick as locusts. Their camels could no more be counted than the sand on the seashore. Gideon arrived just as the man was telling. Okay. Gideon arrived just as a man was telling a friend his dream. "I had a dream," he was saying. "A round loaf of barley bread came tumbling into the Midianite camp. It struck the tent with such force that the tent overturned and collapsed." His friend responded, "This can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash the Israelite. God has given the Midianites and the whole camp into his hands." When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed down in worship. He returned to the camp of Israel and called out, "Get up, the Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands." Dividing the 300 men into three companies, he placed trumpets and empty jars into the hands of all men with torches inside. "Watch me," he told them, "follow my lead. When I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp blow yours and shout for the Lord and for Gideon." Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch. The Night's Watch. Shout out to the Night's Watch, y'all. Like I told y'all, man, Game of Thrones, okay? Game of Thrones. And just after they had changed the guard, they blew their trumpets and broke the jars that were in their hands. The three companies blew the trumpets and smashed the jars. Grasping the torches in their left hands and holding in their right hands the trumpets they were to blow, they shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." While each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. When the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. The army fled to Beth Shittah toward Zerah as far as the border of Abel Meholah near Tabach. Israelites for Naphtali, Asher, and all Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. Gideon sent messengers all throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and seize the waters of the Jordan ahead of them as far as Beth Barah." So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they seized the waters of the Jordan as far as Beth Barah. They also conquered two of the Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeeb. I bet you it's Zeeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeeb at the winepress of Zeeb. They pursued the Midianites and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeeb to Gideon, who was by the Jordan. So there's, of course, it goes into who's Zabah and Zalmunna, and it talks about Gideon's ephod and then Gideon's death. You know, here's the thing, right? Yeah, yeah. Hold on 1 second. All right, so chapter 8, Zebah and Zalmunna. Now the Ephraimites asked Gideon, "Why have you treated us like this? Why didn't you call us when you went to fight Midian?" And they challenged him vigorously, but he answered them, "What have I accomplished compared to you? Aren't the gleanings of Ephraim's grapes better than the full grape harvest of Abiezer?" Wow, that is such a tongue twister. Aren't the gleanings of Ephraim's grapes better than the full grape harvest of Abiezer? God gave Oreb and Zeeb, the Midianite leaders, into your hands. What was I able to do compared to you?" At this, their resentment against him subsided. Gideon and his 300 men, exhausted yet keeping up the pursuit, came to the Jordan and crossed it. He said to the men of Succoth, "Give my troops some bread. They are worn out, and I am still pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." But the officials of Succoth said, "Do you already have the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your possession? Why should we give bread to your troops?" Then Gideon replied, "Just for that, when the Lord has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I will tear your flesh with desert thorns and briars." Oof. From there he went up to Peniel and made the same request of them, but they had answered as the man of Succoth had. So he said to the men of Peniel, when I return in triumph, I will tear down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Kakor with a force of about 15,000 men that were all left of the armies of the eastern peoples. 120,000 swordsmen had fallen. Gideon went up by the route of the nomads east of Nobah and Jogbaha, and attacked the unsuspecting army. Zebah and Zalmunna and the two kings of Midian fled, but he pursued them and captured them, routing their entire army. Wow. Gideon, son of Joash, then returned from the battle by the pass of Erez. He caught a young man of Succoth and questioned him, and the young man wrote down for him the names of the 77 officials of Succoth, the elders of the town. Wow, the elders of the town. Then Gideon came and said to the men of Succoth, here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me by saying, do you already have the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your possession? Why should we give bread to your exhausted men? He took the elders of the town and taught the men of Succoth a lesson by punishing them with desert thorns and briars. He also pulled down the tower of Peniel and killed the men of the town. Then he asked Zebah and Zalmunna, what kind of men did you kill at Tabor? Men like you, they answered, each one with the bearing of a prince. Gideon replied, those were my brothers, the sons of my own mother. As surely as the Lord lives, if you had spared their lives, I would not kill you. Turning to Jether, his oldest son, he said, kill them. But Jether did not draw his sword because he was only a boy and was afraid. Zebah and Zalmunna said, come do it yourself. As is the man, so is his strength. So Gideon stepped forward and killed them, and took the ornaments off their camels' necks. Wow. Yo, this joint is wild. Man, she just left people alone. Jesus. All right, so the verse 22. Gideon's I said Gideon's ephod. So the Israelites said to Gideon, rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson, because you have saved us from the hand of the hand of Midian. But Gideon told him, I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. And he said, I do have one request, that each of you give me an earring from your share of the plunder. It was the custom of the Ishmaelites to wear gold earrings. They said, we'll be glad to give them. So they spread out a garment, and each of them threw a ring from his plunder onto it. The weight of the gold rings he asked for came to 1,700 shekels, not counting the ornaments, the pendants, and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, or the chains that were on their camels' necks. Gideon made the gold into an ephod, which he placed in Ophrah, his town. All Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. So, yo, that's deep. Okay, now it goes into Gideon's death. Thus, Midian was subdued before the Israelites and did not raise its head again during Gideon's lifetime. The land had peace for 40 years. Jerubbaal, son of Joash, went back home to live. He had 70 sons of his own, for he had many wives. His concubine, who lived in Shechem, also bore him a son, whom he named Abimelech. Gideon, son of Joash, died at a good age and was buried in the tomb of his father in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. No sooner had Gideon died than the Israelites again prostituted themselves to the Baals. They set up Baal Berith as their god and did not remember the Lord their God, who had rescued them from the hands of all their enemies on every side. They also failed to show any loyalty to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in spite of all the good things he had done for them. So this joint is wild. It's wild. And I mean, wow, you guys, okay, that was about 18 minutes of reading. Um, so this is wild. Okay, so Gideon, he got the signs and everything. He had, he's like, Lord, give me the signs. I don't want to trouble you again, but please give me another sign. God kept giving him signs and everything like that. But what's wild is that even after all that he did in following the Lord's law, what God had told him to do, the people listened to him, right? And then there was peace under his rule. The fact that when he all the gold and everything that they got from the Midians, right? The fact that Israel prostituted themselves and then they worshipped the ephod, right? Let me see if I can pull up what an ephod looks like. Ephod. What is an ephod? Seriously? They worshipped a coat? Man, hold on. Y'all take a look at this joint. Hold on. They over here worship the coat. So he made an ephod out of all of the stuff, all of the gold, the purple, the garment, and he just made the gold into an ephod, and then he placed it in Ophrah in his town. So think of it like a trophy. He made a trophy out of all of the wars that he just won, and helped everybody, rocked it out, led it, by God's leadership, led everybody into victory because these people were tormenting them and everything like that. And this that he made became a snare to him and his family. Yo, that's wild. And I'm gonna tell you what a snare means. I'll tell you guys what a snare means. A snare means, all right, it's sharing, a trapping device often consisting of a noose used for capturing birds and small mammals, something that lures or entangles the unwary. A surgical instrument with a wire loop controlled by mechanism by the handle, and the handle used to remove growth such as tumors and polyps, to trap with or as with a snare, to get a hold or control of, something difficult to catch. So the ephod, because of the gold, him deciding to make that, so they could have a trophy or whatever. People were like worshiping the gold and the item opposed to God who created everybody and the item and the gold itself, and that became a snare to him because it just like everything about him, essentially, if I'm understanding the context properly, everything about him was tied up into that one thing that he created at the end. And that was like what people just they were like, this is what did it, this is it, this is everything. And that's wild because it's like they really started worshiping a piece of man, yo. Yo, I feel like what in the world? Like, hold on a second. The gold was on the people. It's a trophy, but they worship the trophy as if the trophy did it. The trophy didn't do anything. The trophy was just an additional, like, it's a trophy. But wow, so many people do worship trophies. They worship the titles, they worship the accolades, and that's that that's wild. And then once he died, the moment he died, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna worship Baal again." But that's wild, and they didn't show any loyalty to the family, to his family. No matter the fact that God used him to be the mighty warrior, to help them be delivered from the people that were literally harming them and just taking all of their stuff every time their seeds grew and there was a harvest. Here come all the Midianites and everybody else, and yeah, that's wild. That's wild. But it's wild. So him making that because maybe just something mentally was here because for them to go back to Baal situation with Baal and then to worship a trophy, yeah, there's definitely something yeah, so something mentally going on there. Like that's wild to me. And the fact that that became a snare is what I believe is it sounds like it just wasn't what he was supposed to do. It wasn't what he was supposed to do, and it actually caused more harm. But that's crazy because yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. But anyway, the whole point of today was, asking God for 10 signs. I have been guilty of doing that. I'm like, Lord, if it's you, please do this. Or I'll think a prayer like, Lord, I need you to show me a sign if this is real. And I just want to encourage you if you ever find yourself in that position, I would love to encourage you to fast, to pray, right? And to seek God, for the clarity. A lot of the times it's in the silence that God will speak to you, right? Or during that moment of peace, you could be just doing something, but you are just, meditating. And God will be like, boom, here it is. Or as you walk forward in what God has called you to do, or what you believe God has called you to do, God will start revealing stuff, more and more stuff to you, right? The Bible says faith without works is dead. So is prayer. So if God tells you to do something, even if you don't have everything, perfection can hinder your progress. So, for an example, God had told me to start doing the Bible studies online. I'm like, all right, what you want me to talk about? you know, and I needed to, I repented. I had needed to repent because you know what? I didn't do it right away like I was supposed to. And I was like, all right, God, I want to do things right. I want to make sure that I'm being obedient. Okay, I keep feeling the pull on my heart to do these things. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna do it. And I just started doing it. And it was like instantly I just started seeing God lead me more, like just like, here, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do next. This is what you need to do next. And I didn't have all of the answers right away when I began, before I began. And I was like, wow, if only I just went for it. And I just want to encourage you that a lot of the times we can hinder ourselves if we don't go for it, because we're sitting there waiting for consistent confirmation, signs, and we're waiting for, all the answers. We're not going to have all the answers. And even if God gives us all the answers, guess what? There's still going to be stuff that we don't know. That is the beauty and the adventure of the unknown. And sometimes, you know what? It is a little like, it's a little scary sometimes, but that's how powerful God is, because that's what's like, God's like, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use it for my glory, and it's going to help people, and that's what it's about. And so, I'm like, all right, God, show me what you want me to do. And Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 6. And it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. My understanding is limited. Humanity as a whole, our understanding is limited. Like, we can learn absolutely everything. There's still so much that we don't know. And I don't know about you, but there's been times like when I really first started really getting into the word and really getting into, my research about what's going on in the world. It was so overwhelming. It was like information overload, and I was just like, there's just too much to learn. And one thing that I've learned, and people that I'm connecting with even now, we concur, like, we don't need to know everything. And you know what? It's like, you know what? It's cool. When you have like a feeling or something like that, sometimes you don't need to know why you feel the way that you feel concerning a situation. If God says no, God says no. Let it go. Okay, just keep it moving. Let the separation happen and just rock it out, because you know what? Trying to figure everything out can sometimes hinder your time. It can hinder your blessings. It can hinder your purpose. So just do your best and make some progress. Like, just, hey, rhyme, national poetry, but I'm just saying, do something. If God has called you to do something, you know what I'm saying. Even if you make a mistake, you can always make it right. You can always correct it. But doing something is better than doing nothing. You don't want to be stagnant. You want to make sure that if God has called you to do something, you feel it on your heart. You're starting to see some signs. That's something that can actually help you with what it is that God has called you to do. And that will help you that'll bring more peace into your life, bring more joy into your life. It's just beauty. And as far as I'm concerned, you know what? It's so much better that way, because when you're productive and you're producing the right stuff, it's just so much better. So be encouraged. Make sure you're not allowing stagnance or anything to hinder you or become a snare, or you're putting these things that that you achieve as like a shrine. What I'm saying? You got, yeah, have your trophies and everything like that, but you don't want to worship those things. I don't always flaunt or show off, what I'm saying, the stuff that I know, because it's like titles. There are people with doctorates, And I'll never forget this quote. I love this quote, and it's by Grant Cardone. It's one of my favorite quotes ever. It says, "The world's full of intelligent people, but they aren't doing anything." And I've been in rooms where, I knew the stuff that people have said that have studied for years because I've just done the research, and then I've also, tried things out and then observed, and I'm like, I know this information. And I'm like, wait a second. Does the title really matter? Sometimes it does. I'm not saying like, if you study or research, go be a surgeon. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that there's different things and different aspects of our lives that we sometimes put too high on a pedestal, and we got to be careful. And then, sometimes leverage it to get you into bigger rooms, leverage it to rock things out, but don't make it your God, because then that could be something that could be a snare hindering you from, full freedom and full progression for you and your lineage. So be encouraged. God has already shown you, look, if you know in your heart you're supposed to start the business, because you know what? I just want to encourage you. Failure is going to happen. And the sooner you get over those failures and turn that failure into a step so that you keep going, the better. All the times that I failed within my business, with other ventures and everything like that, it literally has helped me now. I understand so much more. I'm able to navigate, and not only navigate, I'm able to share that information to help others so that they can avoid those mistakes, so that they know how to actually rock things out in a different way. And that's a blessing. That's a total blessing. Between that and then learning what I've learned these last few years, it's like I've gained an additional like 10 years of just wisdom. And to me, that's extremely powerful. And I love that. And it's a blessing to be able to share and communicate with you guys. And so pray that you were blessed by this. Pray that if you know that you're supposed to do something, just go ahead and do it, rock it out, be humble, do it with love, and rock your purpose out. You are needed. We all are needed. Do not put it all on me, because I cannot be the only one out here doing my part. We all need to do our parts. So consider this a fire, light it. It's lit. Do your thing. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you.